Once upon a time, a handsome man named Shabu lived in Quite Village in Africa. He was the dream partner of almost every young lady. Shabu was known for his quiet wisdom and hard-working nature. He had built his life with care and precision, ensuring every step he took was the right one. The only thing missing from his life was a companion, someone to share his dreams and future with. And then he met Ratty, the woman who would change everything. Ratty was more than just a beautiful woman. She was kind, intelligent, and her laughter had a way of lighting up even the darkest moments. Shabu had fallen deeply in love with her, and she with him. Whenever they walked hand in hand through the market or the village streets, people would smile at them, knowing they were a perfect match. Shabu often called her Apple, a name born out of his deep affection for her. To him, she was the sweetest fruit, the one that brought color and taste to his life. He dreamed of marrying her, of building a home where they could grow old together. And one day, he decided it was time. "Apple," he said, as they sat by the riverbank, watching the sun set behind the distant hills. "I think it's time we start planning for our future. I want to marry you, to spend my life with you." Rati looked at him, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I've been waiting for you to say that, Shabu," she whispered. "I want nothing more than to be your wife." They embraced under the fading light, their hearts filled with joy and anticipation. Little did they know that this moment of happiness was about to be overshadowed by a twist of fate. Before they could begin their marriage plans, Rati received news that she had to travel to the city for work. It was a short trip, she assured Shabu. She would be back within the week, and then they could start preparing for their wedding. Shabu was sad to see her go, but he knew it was necessary. "I'll be waiting for you at the bus station," he promised. "We'll talk more about our plans when you return." Rati smiled. "Don't worry, my love. I'll be back before you know it." But as the days passed, Shabu's anticipation grew into anxiety. On the day she was supposed to return, he arrived at the bus station early, pacing back and forth as the buses rolled in. Each time the doors opened, his heart would leap, hoping to see her face among the passengers. But the minutes ticked by, and Ratty never appeared. It wasn't long before he heard murmurs of a road accident involving one of the buses. His heart sank as a deep sense of dread washed over him. Rushing to find out more, he discovered the horrible truth. Ratty's bus had been in an accident on the highway. Desperate for answers, he made his way to the hospital. When Shabu arrived at the hospital, it felt like his world had collapsed around him. There, lying unconscious in a bed, was his beloved Rati. Her face was pale, and her body seemed so fragile beneath the crisp white sheets. The doctors informed him that they had managed to save her, but there was a complication. She had suffered memory loss from the accident. Shabu's heart broke, but he refused to give up. He stayed by her side, holding her hand, whispering words of love, hoping she would remember him. "I'm here, Apple," he said softly. "It's Shabu, the one who loves you. I'll take care of you." Though her eyes fluttered open, there was no recognition in them. Shabu knew he had to take her home and nurse her back to health, no matter how long it took. He hoped that in time, her memory would return, and with it, the love they shared. Weeks passed, and Shabu devoted himself to Rati's care. Each day he would sit with her, telling her stories about their life together, trying to jog her memory. He took her for walks, hoping familiar sights would trigger something. But Rati remained lost, her mind a fog of confusion. One day, Shabu took Rati to go to the local supermarket to buy some food, thinking that going out will help her to recover faster. At the supermarket, a woman approached her, her face full of shock and anger. "Rati," the woman shouted, causing several people to turn their heads. "When were you released from police custody? I was preparing to visit later today. And Shabu, how could you abandon her?" Rati, confused, had no idea who the woman was or what she was talking about. The mystery deepened when the woman, a friend of Ratty's, continued with even more shocking news. Ratty was involved in a police case, and she had been in custody for weeks, accused of a crime. Shabu couldn't believe what he was hearing. "That's impossible," he said. "Ratty has been with me this whole time, recovering from the accident." But the woman was insistent. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Shabu followed her to the police station.
When Shabu arrived at the police station, his world turned upside down. There, sitting in a cold cell, was a woman who looked exactly like Ratty. She had the same eyes, the same face, and the same soft voice. And when she saw Shabu, she burst into tears. "Shabu," she cried, "I've been arrested for something I didn't do. You have to help me." Shabu was speechless. He couldn't understand how this could be. Two women, both identical, both claiming to be the woman he loved. One was lying unconscious in his home, and the other was sitting in a jail cell, begging for his help. Now, Shabu was faced with an impossible task: to find out which of these two women was the real Ratty, the one he had fallen in love with. And as he stared into the tear-filled eyes of the woman in chains, his heart ached with confusion and fear. Shabu rushed home, his heart pounding as he struggled to make sense of the impossible situation. How could there be two Ratties both identical, both claiming to be his apple? Was it his mind playing tricks on him, or had he somehow been drawn into an elaborate scheme? The questions swirled in his mind like a storm, but for now, he had one goal: to return home and see the woman he had been caring for since the accident. Perhaps, in her silent state, she held the answers he so desperately sought. When he arrived, he paused outside the door, catching his breath and gathering his thoughts. With every step closer to the room where Ratty lay, his confusion deepened. He hesitated for a moment before gently pushing open the door. There she was, lying as she had been for weeks, her chest rising and falling softly with each breath. Her delicate face, framed by her long, dark hair, remained peaceful in its stillness. This woman remained silent, her expression unchanged. Shabu sat in the quiet of the room, grappling with the weight of the mystery before him. How could two women exist, each claiming to be Ratty, each pulling him in different directions? Shabu thought back to the moment he found her at the hospital, the shock of seeing her fragile body, and his immediate decision to take her home and care for her. There had been no doubt in his mind then, but now his world was splitting in two. As Shabu sat there, he thought of the other Ratty, the one in the police station, the one who had called out to him, who had looked at him with tear-filled eyes and begged for help. Her voice echoed in his mind. "Shabu, I've been arrested for something I didn't do. You have to help me." He had to figure this out. But where could he turn for help? Shabu knew he couldn't handle this alone. He needed guidance, someone who could help him untangle the layers of confusion. That night, as Shabu tried to sleep, visions of both Ratties haunted his dreams. In one moment, he was with the Ratty who had lost her memory, gently tending to her as she slept. In the next, he was standing before the one in jail, watching helplessly as the prison bars closed between them. It was as if the universe had split his love in half, and now he was caught in the middle. The next morning, Shabu knew what he had to do. In their village, when faced with unsolvable problems, people sought the counsel of the elders. These men and women, revered for their wisdom and knowledge, had guided the village through countless crises over the years. Shabu hoped that they could offer him a path forward, a way to understand the mystery that had befallen him. He made his way to the compound of the eldest among them, Baba Ojo, a man whose reputation stretched beyond the borders of the village. Baba Ojo's small hut sat at the edge of the village, nestled in the shade of ancient baobab trees. The air around it was thick with the smell of burning herbs, a scent that always brought comfort to those seeking his counsel. "Baba Ojo," Shabu greeted, bowing respectfully as he entered the hut. Baba Ojo was seated on a straw mat, his frail body draped in a flowing robe. His eyes, though clouded with age, were sharp and discerning. "Shabu," the old man said in his deep, raspy voice, motioning for Shabu to sit. "I've been expecting you." Shabu's eyebrows furrowed. "You knew I was coming? There are many things I sense before they happen," Baba Ojo replied, a small smile playing on his lips. "Tell me, what troubles your heart, young one?" Shabu began to recount his story, detailing how Rati had traveled for work, the accident, the woman he had brought home, and the shocking discovery at the police station. Baba Ojo listened intently, nodding occasionally but saying nothing until Shabu had finished. "I do not understand, Baba," Shabu said, his voice breaking with frustration. "Two women, both Rati, both claiming to be the one I love. I cannot tell who is real and who is not. How can this be?" Baba Ojo sat in silence for a long moment, his fingers stroking his beard. Finally, he spoke. "Shabu, the world is filled with mysteries beyond our understanding. The spirits of this land are powerful, and sometimes they reveal truths in ways that we cannot easily grasp. What you are facing may be a test, a journey to uncover the truth not just about these women, but about yourself." Shabu frowned. "But how do I know who the real Rati is?" The elder leaned forward, his voice lowering to a whisper. "Truth is not always found in the obvious places. Sometimes it hides in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. You must look beyond what your eyes see. Trust your heart, but also use your mind." "Baba," Shabu said, his frustration growing. "I've cared for one of them for weeks. The other is locked away in a cell. How can I trust my heart when both claim to be the woman I love?" Baba Ojo smiled again, a knowing smile that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "The heart never lies, Shabu. It may be confused, but it never lies. Trust in what you feel, but also prepare yourself. The truth, when it comes, may be more complex than you can imagine." With those words, Baba Ojo handed Shabu a small amulet made of woven twine and beads. "Take this," he said. "It will not give you the answers you seek, but it will protect you as you walk the path to finding them. Go now, and may the spirits guide your steps." Shabu left the hut feeling both comforted and unsettled. The elder's words were cryptic, but there was a certain wisdom in them that he couldn't deny. He placed the amulet around his neck and resolved to follow Baba Ojo's advice. He would trust his heart, but he would also use his mind to uncover the truth. The first place Shabu decided to visit was the hospital where he had found the unconscious Rati. Perhaps there were details from that day that he had missed in his panic and worry. Maybe the doctors or the nurses would remember something that could shed light on the mystery. As he walked toward the hospital, Shabu couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The village, usually filled with the cheerful sounds of children playing and women gossiping in the market, felt unusually quiet. His senses were heightened, and every small noise made him look over his shoulder. When he arrived at the hospital, he headed straight to the reception desk. The nurse behind the desk was busy scribbling on a notepad, barely looking up as Shabu approached. "Excuse me," Shabu began, trying to sound calm. "I'm here about a patient she was brought in after a bus accident a few weeks ago. Her name is Rati." The nurse finally looked up, her face showing mild interest. "Yes, I remember the case," She was in pretty bad shape when they brought her in. You're the man who took her home, aren't you? Shabu nodded. Yes, I've been caring for her since. But I need to know more about her condition when she arrived. Anything unusual? The nurse frowned. Unusual? No, nothing out of the ordinary for someone who's been in an accident like that. She had a head injury, which explains the memory loss. The doctors did all they could to stabilize her. Why do you ask? Shabu hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. It's just, there's another woman, someone who looks exactly like her. I need to know if there's any chance that there was a mix-up, that maybe she wasn't who I thought she was. The nurse's eyes widened slightly. Two women who look the same. That's strange. But no, I don't recall anything like that. The woman you took home was registered under her name, and her ID matched. Shabu thanked the nurse and left the hospital, no closer to the truth than before. As he walked back home, the weight of Baba Ojo's words lingered in his mind. The answer wasn't going to be easy to find. He would have to dig deeper, not just into the events of the accident, but into the lives of the two women who claimed to be Rati. Days later, Shabu returned to the police station. This time, he was determined to speak with the officers handling Rati's case. Perhaps they had discovered something that could help him distinguish between the two women. As he entered the station, the air was thick with tension. The officers were busy, their faces marked with frustration and exhaustion. Shabu approached the desk sergeant. I need to speak with the officer in charge of Rati's case, he said. It's urgent. The sergeant eyed him warily but motioned for Shabu to wait. After what seemed like an eternity. As Shabu waited in the bustling police station, his mind was a tangled web of confusion and fear. Two women, both identical, both claiming to be Rati, haunted his thoughts. After what felt like hours, a weary-looking officer approached him. You're here about Rati? The officer asked, glancing down at his notes before leading Shabu to a quiet room. Seated inside was the second Rati, the one who had been arrested on that fateful day. Her eyes lit up when she saw Shabu, but there was a deep sadness in them, an exhaustion from days of confinement and questions. Shabu, she whispered, her voice cracking. Please, you have to believe me. I didn't do anything wrong. I was arrested just before I was supposed to board the bus to come back to you. Shabu took a deep breath, trying to steady himself as he sat across from her. They say you committed a crime, Rati. But when I went to pick you up from the bus station, I found you unconscious after the accident. Time? How can you be here and there at the same time? The woman leaned forward, her hands shaking. I don't know. All I remember is being at the bus terminal, getting ready to come home, and suddenly, the police were everywhere. They said I was involved in a robbery, but I swear, Shabu, I didn't do it. You know me. Shabu's heart wavered. The woman before him looked so much like the Rati he loved her gestures, the way she spoke, the way her lips trembled when she was afraid. But then, there was the other Rati, lying unconscious at his home, completely unaware of what was happening. I don't know who to believe, Shabu admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Both of you, you're the same, and I don't understand why. Rati reached for his hand, her fingers brushing against his palm in a way that felt so familiar, so real. Please, Shabu, help me. I've been in this cell for days. I didn't do anything wrong. You know I wouldn't lie to you. He pulled his hand back, conflicted. The love he felt for Rati was undeniable, but the fear of being deceived gnawed at him. I need time, he muttered, standing up abruptly. I need to figure this out. As he turned to leave, her voice called after him, breaking. Shabu, Don't leave me here. But he walked away, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had to get to the bottom of this, and the truth seemed to be slipping further and further away. After leaving the police station, Shabu wandered the streets of the village, his mind spinning with possibilities. Who were these women? Was one of them lying? And if so, why? He needed answers, and he needed them fast. He decided to return to the hospital once more, this time with a sharper focus. He had already asked about the accident and the woman who had been admitted, but there was something nagging at him, something he had overlooked in the chaos. When Shabu reached the hospital, he was met by a different nurse, one who seemed younger and more eager to help. He explained his situation again, trying to mask his growing desperation. The nurse furrowed her brow, flipping through files on the desk. "You said she was brought in unconscious after a bus accident?" she asked. Shabu nodded, watching as she sifted through the records. "Yes, that's right. But the problem is, there's another woman who looks exactly like her, and I need to know if there's any chance of a mistake." The nurse glanced at him curiously before flipping open the page of the file. There was something unusual about her admission, she murmured, tracing her finger over the lines of text. Shabu's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" As the nurse was about to reply him, one of her colleagues came to inform her that her attention was needed inside. Determined to find out the truth, Shabu sat patiently waiting for the nurse to return.